The first time I preached in observance of Juneteenth, I began with the facts. I posited it as a story of the coming of freedom, centering freedom's broken journey to the enslaved African Americans. I also considered it as a collective concept or ideal. So freedom is, or it ain't. The next time I preached, I began with a song written in honor of Ella Baker by Bernice Johnson Reagan. We who believe in freedom, she says, will not rest, pointing to freedom's long road and the understanding that the work of freedom is not yet finished. This morning, I want to talk about freedom as identity, as a journey of transformation, about freedom and rest, and about undoing the mentality of slavery. For sure, it is the undoing of a message that told my ancestors they were only valued for labor, for production, only valuable as they were valuable to the machine of labor. So yes, my Sabbath is part of that undoing. But we're all victims of that story, whether you took on the characteristics and personality of empire, or were the victim of a culture and community that told you you weren't valuable beyond what you could produce or attain, that you could never have or be enough. And worst of all, that your station in life, your race, your creed, somehow placed you above others, the other beloved children of God. Yes, so enter as you will and as you're able. Our readings from Exodus and from Matthew's Gospel shine a light on this truth of freedom, the push and pull of it, the already not yet of it. Freedom not as something given or taken, but as identity, as who we already are or desperately long to be. We'll set aside for now any interpretation of our Exodus reading centering the idea that God has chosen one group and excluded others, this doctrine of election, and center instead a response to encounter as we witness Moses' developing relationship with God and subsequently God's revelation of God's self to all. This is the slow and ongoing work of God, and we are all invited into it. So if we hear the word chosen and it makes us feel good, we should probably back up a little bit, because we'd be wise to remember that the call to mission is weighty work, a serious mandate and responsibility. To be chosen is not a game. Hear it as both burden and blessing, but probably more burden. Hear above all God's choice to and desire, God's longing to commune with gloriously imperfect humans, all of us. And so, everything that the Lord has spoken, we will do. This is the community's response at the end of our Exodus reading. These are a people that somehow figured out a way to live into their freedom by answering as one. They're responding to faithful leaders who are themselves responding to the call of God. There's Moses, but we also heard about the elders, this band of faithful leaders who act on behalf of God to bring about God's reign of love and justice on the earth. To that, the people answer as one. If the Lord has said it, we will do it. The people express this pure desire to align with God's will, all as a part of their transformation. This shift in identity as they begin to understand themselves as no longer bound but free, individually and collectively. Here, their growing sense of freedom is expressed as a united voice. I present this community aspirationally as hashtag community goals maybe, but it took a while for them to get there. By the time we get to Jesus' community in the Gospels, we already know that their transformation as it's a reversal of sorts, a reversal of freedom, or more simply stated, we know the impact of empire and the inequality it created and supported. By the time Jesus arrives, the people have been under the weight of that failure for generations. So this isn't forgetting freedom. This is what sustained abandonment by those entrusted with the formation of a people does. It enslaves them. To the 12, Jesus says, "See, I am sending you out like sheep into the midst of wolves. So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Beware of them, for they will hand you over to councils and flog you in their synagogues." Jesus summoned the 12 and gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and to cure every disease and every sickness. Jesus came to set them free and presented this ongoing invitation for them and to us as well into the work of liberation. Jesus gave them the power to lead others to freedom. But remember, the call is to be sent out as a sheep among wolves. It is weighty work, this high calling into a new and even dangerous identity. We join them as they are sent to offer the good news of Jesus to a people who knew the story of liberation by heart and yet lived the reality of that freedom. That lived reality of their freedom had been stolen. Stolen in pieces, in drips, in fits and starts. I am absolutely heartbroken that 2 years after that last sermon, we have not been able to quell the storm of injustice, the slow and painful stripping away of our collective freedoms. We are for sure sent out as sheep in the midst of wolves. We've postured ourselves at the mountain of the machine and under the leadership of an unstable man. And we are not safe. We need divine protection and a hefty spirituality, an ancient and eternal spirituality, I'd say, one that can hold and sustain what is being asked of us in this moment. So do we have that? And are we drawing from it? I believe we do. I have to believe we do. And I certainly believe we're learning to. I'll leave for sabbatical this week. This gift is, in many ways, as I said, the undoing of a centuries-long story that told my ancestors that they were valuable only as they produced for others, that their bodies were not their own, that their time and lives were brokered under a system of white supremacy, that they were not free. And so I'll travel this summer to experience the beauty of self-determination as we visit friends who've begun an intentional community in Belize, to sit with and under the wisdom of their experience as they rewrite their own story, beginning with agency as land and property, builders and owners. And finally, I'll enjoy a pilgrimage to France and Spain to visit some of the sites of the Black Madonna. Our more than decade-long relationship began as I entered the Episcopal Church. She, the Black Madonna, was the perfect, powerful, and opposing force, the counter to the whitewashed sacred art and imagery that fills so many of our churches. So while beautiful, I found those images oppressive. And while the Black Madonna's love is deep and wide and inclusive of all, because she's like that, as a Black woman, as an image, an icon, well, she affirmed and included me. She has been my protector and guide. and she continues to remind me of my freedom. So on the Sunday before Juneteenth, I'm remembering the painfully long arc toward our collective liberation, our collective flourishing. I'm remembering Project 2025, so I'm gonna take it back a minute, of which roughly 50% of the objectives have already been achieved or are well and in motion. I'm remembering the blatant attacks on immigrants, murderous ICE agents, and the inhumane conditions at detention centers. I'm remembering the decimation of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I'm remembering the Epstein files. I'm thinking about a tragic loss of life in 2 teen boys, one black, the other white, and a story of how the trial and sentencing is playing out. It's a lot. There is an overwhelming and blatant attack on our democracy and consequently our birthright and inheritance, our experience as free people. Meanwhile, every Sunday all over this nation, we Christians sing and preach and tell of Jesus' dream of freedom and love. And yet persistently, we oppose the essence of those very words when it's time to make choices that will give the heart of that message to life in the real world. How are we consistently on the wrong side of liberation? Where is our unified voice? Is that our story? This yearning for the promise of God, for a fleeting posture of alliance with God, an allegiance with God, and then a return to the antithesis of it? Is that what we're doing, going back and forward, back and forward? Who are we? What is ours to do? What are we being asked to learn, and what is the wisdom of our time, this tender and tumultuous time? A time we've been called to live in, because our lives are not accidents. I believe we're here in this experience together for a reason. We're here and called to face with curiosity and hope the witnessing of these shifts and reversals. So what are we going to do about it? Ours is the job of wrestling with the moral and spiritual underpinnings of this call. The call to a deep and lasting liberation as an understanding of who and whose we are. So what are we to do? As believers, when it comes to freedom, we cannot be neutral. Fannie Lou Hamer and so many others have made plain this understanding that none of us are free until all of us are free. We are called to the collective, the communal good of God's people as expressed in the good news of Jesus. To operate and abide by the words of Jesus as remembered in our sacred text is the work. But this begins with Jesus, not as doctrine or institution, but as the one who sees, who loves, and always moves toward us. This ethic of Jesus is written into the structure of who we are. It is our identity, it is our highest goal. It is our identity, it is our highest goal. And we must claim it for ourselves and offer it to each other. This is what freedom is. This is what freedom does. So let's live free. Let's embody it. Amen.